You've just stepped into the Midlife Revolution Unleashed, your space to ignite possibility, redefine purpose, and embrace the power that comes with age and experience. Co-hosted by yours truly, Coach Wayne.
And I'm Coach Stacy M. Lewis. We are two seasoned coaches focused on the midlife community of color. This isn't just a podcast, it's a movement. In a world that sometimes forgets the power and the wisdom that comes with age, we are here to ignite a revolution and rewrite the narrative of this incredible journey.
So, whether you're navigating your career, growing your business, rediscovering passions, or challenging the status quo, this is your space. So, buckle up. Let's dive into the Midlife Revolution Unleashed. Hey, Stacy, good afternoon. And
good evening.
Good evening. And wherever you are, welcome again to another episode of Midlife Revolution Unleashed. I am Coach Wayne, the VIP coach, helping men through midlife so that their second half can be their best half. And riding alongside me is none other than the great Coach Stacy M. Lewis.
It is always our pleasure to be with you. Welcome to the Midlife Revolution Unleashed. I am Coach Stacy M. Lewis. I'm a nonprofit executive. I'm a lover of God and his people and a midlife women's coach. And so it is always Wayne and I's pleasure to host the Midlife Revolution Unleashed. Welcome to another Tuesday evening where we are live. If you are catching the recording, watching the recording, we appreciate your support and we're so glad that you are here. We look forward to your comments, your insights, and your role in the midlife revolution. What's going on today, Wayne? Oh, you reminded us last time that it's February. So let's just have our little moment in Black history. Today is February 11th, known to some of us as Free at Last Day. It is the day that we acknowledge that Nelson Mandela was set free from prison after being there for 27 years during the apartheid system. So that is your day in Black history. February 11th, Free at Last.
Stuff. Yeah, worth mentioning. And we speak of Nelson Mandela, but there were quite a few years that his support was the great Winnie Mandela.
Absolutely.
I'm very fond of. Yeah.
Absolutely. Yes, indeed. Powerful powerhouse couple while they were together, and they certainly made an impact even on us in the U.S. I can remember that time of apartheid and just trying to support our people in South Africa at that time. So
Stacey,
here we are. Mm-hmm.
Stacy, this weekend, or I want to say this week, actually, as of Sunday night, maybe Sunday night around, I started feeling that way like 9 o'clock-ish. Okay. I got wings and I started flying like an eagle, Stacy.
EAGLES, Eagles. I'm a Steelers fan, but I gotta say, being in Pennsylvania and watching the Eagles win, they didn't just win, they won. That was exciting. That was exciting.
I'm loving it. And
yes. I really go deep dive into Kendrick Lamar's performance, but I'm just not that with it. I need a tutor to help me understand how powerful and poignant it was. So I'll work on that. Maybe we can discuss that when I get a little more educated.
Tremendous use of metaphors, symbolisms, just storytelling, so much cryptic stuff that for those who know, right? And I missed most of that, if not all of it, because during his performance, I was with some brothers and it was noisy in the sports bar. And I'm looking for the halftime stuff and he's performing. So we're watching from a distance and we're chatting and we missed all of the stuff. And I didn't get it, to be honest. Even if I had heard it, I probably wouldn't have gotten it. Mid-age me. But what happened was after the fact, when folks were breaking it down, I tuned right in and then I started watching it again with some of the scripts and analysis, and I got it. That was
Mhm.
some deep, deep, very profound stuff. And I think it fell short on a lot of folks who were present and those who were there and still not present, if you know what I mean.
Well, I think what I think is that, it really speaks to or leads into what we're going to be chatting about tonight, right? About critical thinking. The critical thinking blueprint, really going beyond the surface. And I think using Kendrick as the example, right? You really have to listen and think critically and go beyond the surface of the beat and the dancing and the movement. You got to really think critically. So I'm excited about tonight's conversation.
Yeah, absolutely. Stacey, in one of the promo posts that I had, one on Facebook just a few minutes ago, I pointed out that there's a quote that says, "We don't have a problem thinking, we have a thinking problem."
Mm.
And when you think about it, it's been a while, and I don't mean to insult folks, but I'm just saying, for real, it's been a while since I met really independent thinkers.
Hmm.
Folks are thwarted somehow in terms of their sensibility and their thoughts by the influence of social media, just mass media in general, school, indoctrination, and so forth.
Hmm.
And more than ever with AI.
Yeah, I think there are so many factors. And one thing I was thinking about is that many of us weren't even taught how to think critically. We were often taught that what you hear is what's real or to be taken as you heard it. Even thinking about going back to being a child, right? You didn't apply critical thinking when it came to your parents or elders telling you what to do. We don't need you to think critically. We just need you to do what it is you're supposed to do. And I think those are some of the things that yes, we have, in this midlife season really come a long way. And oftentimes, even if we learned how to think critically, we may not practice how to think critically often. So you're not late, Delane. You are right on time. Says, welcome to the Midlife Revolution Unleashed.
My sister, you're in God's time. You're not late. And
So, what would you say is the first step in that thinking critically?
the first step is to be able to ask questions, right? Poignant questions.
Mm-hmm.
And there's never a dumb question except the one that you hold back from asking that needs to be answered, right? And so
Right.
I think the most important aspect of critical thinking is to not, as we said earlier, take things as it appears or on the surface and to probe by asking questions. And
Mm-hmm.
Stacey, the first question that we must ask is to whom?
Ourselves.
Ourselves. And so
Mm-hmm.
we gotta start doing that more often as critical thinkers.
Yeah, I think we also think about some of us think about critical thinking as applying to the things out there, right? Like what we hear in the news world or the environment or even on the job. Yet the reality, is critical thinking should apply even when we're talking or thinking about ourselves and what we want next. What do we want to happen with our career? Where do we want to go? How do we want our business to grow? What do we want next for ourselves in fulfilling and living our highest possibilities? And critical thinking, right? Asking powerful questions, and writing down those answers is also a good habit. But asking those powerful questions is really key in applying critical thinking to our own growth and development.
Yeah. At a very early age in school, we were told to frame our essays by asking the questions of where, why, what, whom, and how, right? And so as
Mm-hmm.
critical thinkers, we need to pose those questions to ourselves. Does it make sense just because everybody says so, right? Or because that's what we have believed all along? And that takes us to a second point in our critical thinking, Stacy, and that is to evaluate the evidence as objectively as we can. Now, Stace, some people are going to say, how can it be objective if it's coming from you? It's going to be subjective. So speak to that, Stacy. How do we evaluate objectively?
Absolutely. I mean, I think it really is um, one opportunity is to find sources that either challenge our initial belief or thought or support our initial belief or thought. Like you're saying, it's not just about us. It's about, okay, what facts, what data, what am I gathering here to answer the question? What is the evidence that supports the current answer that I have? And I think that it really, this is going back quickly to asking the powerful questions. It is taking that and applying that same question to the situation from many different angles to see if that answer, that response is still the same. And good evening, Curtis. It is always, always a pleasure to have you in the Midlife Revolution Unleashed.
Curtis in the house.
Curtis in the house.
And Stacy, we have this bias
Mm,
oftentimes. We see things through the eyes of our beliefs. And so if we believe a thing to be, because that's the dogma that we grew up with or we attained somewhere along the way, the evidence is going to support that because we're just looking for the things that support that thing we believe. And
mm-hmm.
it's important for us to recognize that this is where the objective thinking come in to speak to your point, Stacy. It's important that we recognize that because we believe it doesn't make it so. So
That is true. That
busting up
is true. And it
and taking
seems
off.
like you have a little familial support happening here. You know, our dad always encouraged that. You always asked our opinion and why, right? Why we feel that way, why we believe that way. And thinking about it from the perspective of being uh, someone in midlife, one example of the bias, right, that many of us have, whether it be at the forefront of our mind or the recesses of our mind, is I'm too old, right? Like, is that factual? Are you really too old to pursue that dream? Are you really too old to go back to school? Are you really too old to find a new love in your life? That to me is a bias that needs to be challenged on an ongoing basis. Are you too old for the promotion? The answer is no, no. You're not.
Yeah.
Mhm.
And you're talking about when we are talking about are we too old, a lot of times we have heavy emotional
Mm,
weight in on the decisions we
mhm,
make and the way that we choose to break down a thing. And so when it comes to critical thinking, we have to be able to separate our emotions, don't get
mhm.
so soaked into the thing, and not be steered clear from being critical because we're so emotionally connected and involved. Stacy, during the course of the last several days since the general elections, people have their strong emotional feelings about what's going on.
Mhm.
And as such, everything that you see in social media is not necessarily true. But because we are tied into what we want to believe, a lot of times people hold on to it just because it supports that.
Absolutely. so much of what you see out there is not true, and those often, those posts are designed to evoke emotions, and there are ways that emotions can influence our decision making. Are we making decisions and thinking based on regrets or uncertainty, or a sense of, nostalgia? It used to be that way, and I enjoyed it when it was that way, or I was happy when, or I will be happy when. Yet the reality is that we need to, as you said, really separate the emotions from the facts and incorporate that into our thinking.
And Stace, it's hard to do because when we have attachment, we feel like we own the rights to that thing. And I know how difficult it is when you're attached. It's like parents, right? Critical thinking. You have to make a decision sometimes in terms of the best decision for your family. But
Mm-hmm.
oftentimes when we are parents or guardians, we are so attached to the person that we're responsible for, it blurs our decision making in terms of being critically involved in the thinking that makes those decisions, and we kind of go with the flow because we feel a sense of, this is my child, so let's make this work this way. Have to be careful with that.
What are the facts, right? And we really want to make sure that we are paying attention to the facts, the real data, not the emotional data, not the imaginary data, but really the real data.
And Stacey, you had mentioned about breaking problems down.
Mm.
Now, critical thinking has a part of it that's also strategic sometimes, right? Because you're thinking critically and you're weighing all the stuff and assessing, and also sometimes planning forward.
Mm-hmm.
Uh, I have a friend who likes to say that you have to play chess while you're playing with people who are thinking in the way of checkers. And so it's being strategic as well as critical. How do you break things down, Stacy?
Well, it's an excellent question, and part of me wants to answer kind of from a personal anecdote, and then the other part wants to answer from my entrepreneurship anecdote. I'm going to go with the personal anecdote because one of the most pressing issues in my life right now is that of elder care. Right? Is that of caring for an aging mom, and the complexity of the caring is, caring for her financially, making sure she has the support, the physical support that she needs. Making sure I'm understanding what are the emotional needs that she has, and kind of it can become overwhelming, right? And I think that we can all relate to the O word, the overwhelm word. And for me, it really does the breaking down the problem into manageable parts says, okay, let me take the financial issue. And what are my questions? What are our questions? I have siblings, thank God, and we're trying to manage it all together. But what are the key questions, right, that I need to ask about the finances, about what her future expenses may be, and really getting the facts that we talked about earlier about what kind of money is currently in the bank, what kind of disposable, I don't know if you have any disposable income, but I really don't, but what kind of disposable, or how can I make some finances, how can I set some of my own finances aside in a way that helps to tackle this challenge. So that was my somewhat long-winded way of, how I have to break down something that is overwhelming into parts, and really then think about, okay, where can I get the money from? Or how can I start to really build a little bit of a nest egg over here specifically for my mom? How can I support someone from afar to make sure she gets the emotional attention and support that she needs? So that's my example. Wayne, what's your
That's a very apt example, Stacey. Thank you for sharing that, because on this platform, we're speaking to midlifers,
right?
and so many folks that we're speaking to, that really resonated and went home for them. They're dealing with elderly care as well. They're
Mm-hmm.
dealing with the decisions about, and for the most part, we don't have five parents, so it comes up on us once or maybe twice if you have a mom and dad.
Mm-hmm.
And
Mm-hmm.
that's happening. It's not like we're prepared for it before it happens. And so what you shared was powerful because it helps us to segment, as it were, or break down into tiny chunks. They say, how do you chew the elephant? How do you eat the elephant? One bite at a time, right? And so what you're saying here is, in terms of critical thinking, you had to figure out, how to manage the care, the support with companionship and money wise and all those
Right.
good for your mom. That's where you had to deal with them, and that's beautiful. Thank you for sharing that, Stacey, and I hope you.
Absolutely. I think, or not, I think I experienced that, challenging conventional thinking during this time, right? When I feel overwhelmed, really challenging, like, what are my old thoughts about this situation? And how can I begin to challenge those old thoughts and redefine what success looks like? And I think that applies to many of the problems that we face as humans and as folks in midlife, to really, start to challenge some of those conventional thoughts and break down these problems in ways that position us in strength and in power.
Stacey, one strategy that I use as a coach working with midlife men, and now I'm opening up and have been working with couples as well, is similar to that. We
Mm-hmm.
look at if a person has a habit or is doing something, one of the ways I help them to evaluate if it's making sense is what we call the ecology of it. That is, we break down who are the persons, places, and things in your life that's been impacted or affected by this behavior. And so if you want
Mm-hmm.
to make a decision, you got to break them down, like you just pointed out, critically, and say, well, how does it affect the people who matter to me the most? How does it affect my place of abode or where I am or spend my time? All of those things. And we help people to kind of digest what seems to be a gigantic issue by breaking them down like that.
Yeah, I would say to our fellowship that the value of learning to break down problems into manageable parts and really then thinking creatively applies to all aspects of life, right? Whether you are um, considering opening or starting a new business or going for the promotion, we tend to ask ourselves a question from the negative vantage point of, like, can I do this? In comparison to really challenging ourselves, that said, in a way that says, what is the first step or the smallest step or the easiest step I can take to move in this direction, in the direction I want to go?
Let me share with you, Stacey. If you see me making up my face when I sip this, it's water that I poured from a container here. Water in a glass tastes so different than
Mm-hmm.
water in a plastic. So I'm gonna next time bring my glass to the table, exactly, and forget about it. It's because I have a child-proof, spill-free top on this. I don't want to mess up my keyboard. Knowing me, it's gonna be all over the keyboard and
It's
the
mid
show is
it's
over.
it's midlife, not, not you're not in
Yeah,
the fourth quarter, Wayne, but
yeah.
I understand. I
I know.
understand.
I'm telling myself. Yeah. And Stacey, let's talk a little about um, some action steps
Sure.
that folks can take in midlife to improve their discernment. My word for the year is discernment.
That's
And
the word.
yeah, and so discernment really comes around too from applying some critical thinking, I would say.
Mhm. Mhm. Absolutely. because
So
you're
let's,
bringing in the facts, right?
yeah,
If you discern, you're bringing in the facts,
yeah,
not so much the emotion, but the facts about the situation.
yeah, yeah. In a time like now, Stacy, we want to challenge folks to release themselves of some of the cognitive biases that they have, right? We talked about it
Mhm.
earlier. And when something presents itself to you, midlifers, we're in a place where we have to make some decisions. Oftentimes, the decisions are, we talk about elder care, they're around your status in terms of your position with work, job,
Mhm.
entrepreneurship.
Mhm.
You know, it's where you're looking at the next 20 or 30 years and realizing that only half of your life has passed. And so, critically, what are the best steps for you? And we are suggesting that you are one, able to think on your own and move. You're old enough to move away from the influences of your neighbors and the people that chatter
Mhm.
around you. So get into a space where you can zero in your own head space.
Yeah. Yeah, and you said discern, right? Like, so even those neighbors out there, you can discern whether what you're hearing is right for you. One of the for me, in so many circumstances and situations, my first action uh, is to take a breath. So often the situations that we're dealing with, and the decisions that we're looking to make, um it just they cause the mind to really start to race. And I find that taking a pause, a deep breath, before making decisions, before, as you begin to really think more critically, is a great action that
Yeah.
everybody can take.
Yeah. And there are some questions that I'm going to just shorten that, but there are questions that I oftentimes tease clients with too. And these are the what if questions,
Mhm,
questions like, what if this were not true? What
mhm,
if it is so? What if I don't have all the information?
mhm.
What if there's more to this? And so when we start asking more what if questions with an open mind, because we could ask it and then still be closed up and not care for the response or the feedback, but to be genuinely open and willing to even change your decision or opinion
Mhm.
based on the feedback.
I agree, and I love good questions. I think every coach probably does love good questions. I think another action is to just jot down a pros and cons list.
Mm,
Sometimes we can swirl around in our brain, and you and I have often talked about brain dumping in our episodes. And the idea there is really getting it out of your head so that you really can begin to think about it critically, and writing down the pros and cons, or the pluses and minuses, however you want to create your list, is a way that you can quickly analyze, your thoughts, and start to move forward.
I want to give you a joke, Stacey, before we go.
Oh
So
God.
many people depend on AI. My daughter was proctoring. She's uh, a doctoral student, right? And she was proctoring a class, and she saw some AI work that obviously were generated by AI. They didn't even bother to switch it up, right? And so what really gave it away was the references. Now, I don't know if people know this, but oftentimes the references you get from some AI tools are nonsensical. They don't make sense. They don't exist. They're not real. And so she got these references and she's just started randomly checking a few of them,
Mm-hmm.
and they just didn't match up. So she realized, and when she called them in, they admitted, and they got a chance. So part of critical thinking, even with the use of AI, is to stop and check for yourself. Now, social media has declared, some of them, the popular platform, including I think this one, that there's no more fact checks. So you got to do your own due diligence. That's part of
Do
it.
your work. That's right. That AI, I use AI, and yet I recognize AI as a tool for human intelligence. And yes, that intelligence should say, check those resources. Some of my colleagues have talked about, the fact that they might use AI for looking for a Bible reference, and actually what comes up uh, is not correct. And so they do say in the fine print, check your work because AI can make mistakes. And so I think it kind of sums up one of the last take actions that I have, and that is to continue to embrace lifelong learning. Right? We don't want to be afraid of AI, but we need to learn how to use it in a way that helps us think more critically and be accurate, and make sure that we're really paying attention to moving forward, being agile.
That's a great note to exit, Stacy, and I'm glad you said that. Not to let AI use you. You really be the master of your own universe.
That's right. That's
Boy,
right.
guys, you need to do that. Stacy, how can folks get a chance to get your gift of coaching?
All right. Well, they are welcome to reach me at any time. And we want to thank Lance Johnson for joining us tonight.
Lance, Stacy, Lance is my man from back in the day. Lance, my brother, love to you.
What? Love to you, Lance. I don't even know you, but if you're a brother from back in the day to Wayne, well, then you a brother from back in the day to me. So
thank you so much for
joining us.
Man. Lance is the man. Lance, gotta connect with me after this somehow. We gotta connect, brother. Yes, sir.
Gotta connect. He definitely gave us the big heart. So
I love it.
Big heart back to you, Lance. I can be reached at thestacymlewis.com. You can connect with me on whatever platform that you are catching this episode on, as well as somehow we'll have to begin to really share that folks can also catch us on their favorite podcast player. So that's how you can reach Stacy.
Yeah, just take that drive and tune into Midlife Revolution Unleashed on your favorite podcast and grab us our episodes. There are probably about 30 much of them right now, 40 at least, right?
40. Stacey? That's right, 40, sir, 40.
Yeah. And me, guys, just DM me, and we're kind of out of time. DM me, go on the website, VIPtransformativeliving.com. I am happy to give you a free 1-hour session on any issue you want to talk about, for just coaching. So hit me up and we'll make it happen. And next week, Stacy, do you remember what we got online for next week?
Oh, that's a good question, Wayne. I'm gonna go with no, I don't.
Okay.
So, I thought that critically for a second and then realized, no, I don't.
So let's thank everybody, and let's get out of here, and we'll do this again next week.
Thanks so much for joining us on the Midlife Revolution Unleashed. We appreciate you being here and your support.
See you next time.
Absolutely.
And there you have it, folks. This week's episode of the Midlife Revolution Unleashed. Hey, we truly appreciate your spending this time in this space with us. Join us next week at the same time as we dive into relevant topics and present solutions to spark new thinking and empower your midlife journey.
And don't forget, if you enjoyed today's episode, let us know in the comments and share it with others. And of course, remember to subscribe, share, like, hit that notification bell. You are the Midlife Revolution Unleashed. I'm Coach Stacy, and I'm cheering you on.
And I'm Coach Wayne, and I'll see you at the top.